Hello, everybody. Nadine is letting everybody into the Zoom, so it'll be another minute or so, but we're getting close to getting started.
I think we're good to go. It looks like it's slowed down a little bit. Sue, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Okay, you want to put the slides up? Nadine?
Will do.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, so this is our October Greater Pine Island Civic Association membership meeting. We did have a slightly different agenda, but we have decided to make this a Hurricane Helene update from both our county level and our local level in terms of what we can expect and sort of where the next steps are. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know we've invited folks from both Matlacha and Pine Island, and hope we have a few Matlacha folks here. Let's go ahead and move on. I guess one of the things I wanted to mention, we do have a few housekeeping items. The meeting is being recorded. You got that prompt when you entered. And we'll be posting the meeting video on our GPICA website. Please keep your microphone on mute during the meeting. After opening remarks from our speakers, we'll open the floor for questions. And after that, we'll be able to get your comments and questions. At that time, if you can use the little button, I think it's in reactions, that says raise my hand. It looks like a little hand. That way we'll be able to find you in the meeting. And then unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question. Make sure you do indicate who you're asking, if it's the folks from Greater Pine Island Alliance or Mr. Ruane. And then also we're going to have, we do have information on the GPICA website with post-Helene resources and links for support from other organizations like FEMA and other things. So you can look there to get further information. As you can see on your screen, I'm going to make a few opening remarks, and then we're going to have some opening comments from Mr. Ruane, from the Lee County Commissioner. He's our representative. And then both Erin Barreda and Erin Lambert are going to speak from the Greater Pine Island Alliance, which is our local disaster recovery organization that we've been referring people to get help and to ask questions. After the opening remarks of the speakers, we'll open it up for member questions. So this is going to be a fairly simple meeting. Some opening remarks, and then just ask your questions and ask that you wait until you're called on. Nadine will let you, we'll call on you, and then you go ahead and ask. I just wanted to say I've been out and about on the island a bit since Friday morning. It seems like the outer, probably a quarter to a half miles worth of perimeter has gotten flooded pretty much all the way around the island. And that means both St. James City and Bokeelia and some of the edge communities along the shorelines, at least on the east side. I think Pine Island Cove and Flamingo Bay did a little better this time than they did with Ian. Certainly Bokeelia got more surge than with Ian. So what's kind of happened is we have some folks who are pretty much okay. They didn't get water in their house. We still have all the utilities, electricity and water and communications and gasoline. But for some families, it's another round of disaster recovery. And just ask you to keep your neighbors and friends in mind. You may not realize it, but if they got flooded, they're going through another Ian type event. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Kevin Ruane is on the board of Lee County Commissioners. He's the vice chair. He's been on the board since 2020 and has also in his past served as the mayor of Sanibel, so he knows about island life. He's currently a representative or the chair of Resistant Lee's Recovery Task Force. which is an advisory committee to the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. And it does advise on how to proceed with making Lee County more capable to withstand some of these issues with storms. So with that, I'll kick it off to Mr. Ruane. 10 minutes or so of your opening remarks about what's the state of affairs in Lee County and what can we expect from the county in terms of assistance or information, and like where do we go from here?
There.
He's on mute. Oh.
Now you can hear me. Okay. You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So obviously we prepared for the storm. Was at the EOC on Thursday as we were watching this come in. The storm obviously created a lot more flooding issues throughout the county. My district, probably like Ian, took the worst of the damage from floods. The bad part of this storm is that we're going to handle it like a regular storm, but reimbursement is going to be challenging due to the nature of just so many areas that have hit. FEMA has particular guidelines, like we need to have more than $5 million in debris pickup before they will give us a dime back. There's so many different thresholds that we have to meet, whether it's roads, whether it's parks, whether it's debris. So this is going to be our worst fear, that we're going to be paying for everything, probably with no opportunity for reimbursement. But we have not changed our method that we're going to go and go about this. We do have a debris plan. We obviously expect you to put your things on the curb. We're going to have very specific guidelines and trying to keep certain construction material in one pile and like appliances in another pile. So we just want to make sure that we're there and helping you in any way possible. I've done a survey in Pine Island. I've been in Sanibel. I've been in Captiva and Southwest Cape. Tomorrow I will go to Boca Grande for the first time. Boca Grande got hit the worst. We've been pumping water out of Boca Grande for the last 72 hours. And they really didn't have a water event during Ian at all. We're trying to obviously evaluate what issues we do have, what is storm surge, what is stormwater draining issues that we potentially have, and try to identify those as much as humanly possible. Working with DOT, obviously we had challenges with DOT. The first thing we had to do was go out and inspect all the bridges, which we did. 24 hours later, we were able to say they were all fine. Thank God, only some minor impacts to any of the bridges. Pine Island Bridge did, reasonably well considering, and really ran through that. But DOT has had crews out, obviously doing any type of debris. Ajax, who's the contractor for the Pine Island Bridge, was proactive in removing debris, really without any guidance from us. They were there trying to move debris to make sure that we had a path through, and we really greatly appreciate all they did. We're in the process of trying to have them accelerate the bridge and everything associated with trying to get that completed before January 31st. They have severe liquidated damages in their contract, so they're more than aware of that. We also had a meeting with a lot of stakeholders to talk about what opportunities we could have to accelerate that process. They came back with an incentive-laden contract to obviously help accelerate rebuilding and accelerating the bridge so we can complete it before January 31st. I know everyone's very frustrated, but the challenge in this whole situation is, from a global point of view, Lee County operated this past year at a deficit. So the revenue that we had coming in is mainly from ad valorem taxes. And we took a very aggressive stance in allowing as much protection from our constituents as possible. So if you had damage from the storm and we were able to verify your damage, your building amount on your trim notice got dramatically reduced, some down to zero. So as you can imagine, your trim notice is a byproduct of building and land. So with the building being decreased, our revenues took a real big significant hit coming in the door. So we did operate this past year as a deficit. And now being compounded by Helene, we're going to go through the issues that everyone's going through, that it's enough of a flood event to cause havoc, but not enough of a flood event to really get some real reimbursement. And I think because FEMA is stretched further than you could imagine as it went through multiple states, and power outages have been, located and indicated in 10 different states. So I just think the capacity across the board is just stretched beyond anyone's imagination. DOT is trying to do the best they can and trying to help us in so many ways. And honestly, I think all things considered, we fared very well. We will have, actual information for you all to separate both garbage and obviously construction material, but we will pick it up regardless. So it's going to be normal, no different than what you experienced during Ian. The difference is that FEMA is not going to be at least available, and we're proceeding with them not being available to help us with reimbursement. And I think because of just how far they're stretched and they don't have enough people, it's going to be a challenge, even when we try to meet the threshold we have to. But we're operating as business as usual. We're trying to do everything we possibly can. It's only been 4 days since we were able to go out and assess damage. Friday morning, I was up in a helicopter as early as I could be to try to survey my district, and certainly did that. And then slowly but surely was able to get my vehicle and start to, between Saturday and Sunday, go through the various territories. Boker, I was just told to hold off going there. So I can honestly say that I've been on the ground in all the areas. So understanding what you're all going through, like some of the speakers were saying earlier, this created havoc in areas. I was on the phone talking with Steve Hunch, some others. Some areas just flooded that didn't flood during Ian. So no rhyme or reason. We're trying to get to the bottom of that. It's just going to take a little while to understand what was storm surge, what is stormwater areas. There's obviously a lot of money for hazard mitigation that we're going to need to go out and reapply for, because we have trying to identify what is storm surge and what is stormwater drainage issues. We have grown exponentially in population, so we're trying to ascertain where our issues are and what was the cause of the issue, so we understand how to address it. Storm surge is just something I don't know what we're going to do. A lot of people are asking us to insert these panels that they put up in Tampa. They obviously have them around the Tampa hospital. They were very effective. They're extremely expensive, and I don't know where we would start and where we'd stop, because when you look at my district, it's all coastal. So I don't know how you would contain that much water. I don't know what type of cost it would be to do that. I don't know what the installation is, and as important, what would be eligible for reimbursement. My understanding is that Tampa Hospital fronted the money in Tampa to put these panels up. There's still panels that prevent water from actually protruding anything, but as you can imagine, they're extremely expensive, and we're trying to get an understanding of linear feet that we might need, what that cost might look like, and see what opportunities we're going to have for reimbursement. But as we understand things, I prepared for this meeting in a whole different way because I was, obviously asked to do so. So I will share with the group through email tomorrow all my notes from 2020 to parks to DOT, everything that was asked of me. I literally have, when Nadine sent me a text earlier, it's like, you have 10 minutes. I said, I have 4 pages of information that we prepared for the meeting. So I know that everyone's just really anxious with the storm. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there is another storm out there that has 40% probability of developing this week. Our meteorologists at the moment are more concerned about the following week. It's in the Caribbean. It's certainly not going to have the intensity that Helene had, but it's certainly going to have a lot of rain. And the best case scenario would be a lot of rain to us. The worst case scenario would be flooding once again, but that's going to be the week after next. So we're monitoring that. We were open at the EOC through Monday, trying to deal with, as many issues as we possibly could. A lot of people took our advice. So the good news is that we didn't have any real issues. There are no fatalities that I'm aware of that were attributed to the storm. So thank God, because this storm obviously has record number of fatalities throughout other states and other areas. Our friends to the north, really took a hit. It's going to be a busy time up in Tallahassee this upcoming season. We still have a lot of money to collect from Ian. I just don't know how deep Tallahassee's coffers are going to be with 10 or 11 billion dollars in reserves for emergency, fund. It's going to be challenging because I look at the devastation, that really started from Charlotte County up to Pinellas and so many other areas. So, we're fortunate to be in a place we are, and I'm grateful, and I really hate the pain people are going through, but I'm grateful our area, I believe, has the ability and the resiliency to take care of this without a lot of help from state or federal. Not to say we're not going to go for funding. It's just going to be a lot more challenging because, as you can imagine, from a priority point of view, it's going to be Taylor County, and then you're going to start to say what areas got affected the worst, and then we're unfortunately going to be the bottom of that pile. We've been very, very active in the conversations we've had. State's been great, but I just think this is a storm, if you can imagine, just stretched way beyond anyone's comprehension. And resources, whether it's DOT or Parks or FEMA, are stretched beyond anyone's capability. We were fortunate to be able to get both Senator Rubio and Senator Scott to open up the SBA portals for individuals as well as for businesses. So they're open and available. So anyone's able to. We certainly can make sure when I'm done with the call that you have the websites. You can put it out in your membership to have that. So you have that opportunity. As we work through that process, we will certainly continue to update you. But it wasn't until Sunday that we had Senator Scott down here working with Senator Rubio that got through and got approved because of our area not having the same type of impact. And unfortunately, the way FEMA does evaluations, it really goes from what type of flooding. And flooding is not as detrimental as wind. And they look at the flooding that took place as like sheetrock and baseboard. It doesn't have the same impact. That's not to say that people aren't going through the misery. And quite frankly, I think people are really raw right now. They went through and obviously fixed their home. I had more texts of people flooding, in the middle of the storm. I became involved in the school system because somehow school was going to open on Friday. And I could tell you residents of all the Berry Islands, Pine Island and Sanibel, people were jumping out of their skin to think they had to leave their home to obviously do that. So it's a new school board. We have an interim superintendent. So the same constituents that I represent, I became very much engaged talking to the chairman, Sam Fisher, and ultimately, after about 3 hours of round-the-clock calls with our meteorologists and natural resource people, whatever, we were able to convince schools to stay closed on Friday, which we need to correct this situation. Unfortunately, when Dr. Bernieri stepped down, he was part of the EOC. He was working hand in hand. Dr. Savage, unfortunately, was not at the EOC. So they were like an island by themselves. So we try to work together as one. So it's just another unfortunate situation. I do apologize for anyone on Pine Island that went through the trouble, whether you were working in a school, whether you're a bus driver, whether you're a teacher. People don't realize that you might live on a Berry Island, but you teach in town. And how do you leave your home when they're asking you or demanding you to get to school? So it became a really dicey situation after a long day at the EOC to come home and argue with something. Constituents don't realize that we have no say in the school board, although it became something that I just got too emotionally involved in, and unfortunately it took 3 hours to get them to convince to close the schools. So I do appreciate everyone's anxiety with the storm, and I'm really sorry what you went through. At our own home, we saw more water than we've ever seen, much higher than Ian. It didn't breach our house, but certainly docks and everything else were underwater. So I understand the gravity of this situation, and my area just continues to seem to be an area that's just overwhelmed with water and flooding. That's the highlight I can give you. 4 working days after the storm, we still have a lot of information to continue to gather. We will continue to update you, and I will make sure that we give you and your organization the latest and greatest that we have.
All right, thank you very much. Very, very thorough. Even in the 10, 15 minutes, you did a really thorough job. And we'll appreciate your further work that you prepared. We'll put that on our website.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk to the folks from the Greater Pine Island Alliance before we take questions. So the Greater Pine Island Alliance is an organization that formed after Hurricane Ian and was instrumental in helping coordinate a lot of the island response. It grew as an organization after Ian and now has a staff and has a lot of contacts with local nonprofits and has been very helpful. So the 2 folks that are here from the Greater Pine Island Alliance are the co-founder Erin Barreda. Erin is a U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, retired, and he's also the commander of the American Legion post down in St. James City. Erin Lollar Lambert is has worked in a lot of different volunteer functions at several nonprofits, and she's currently I would call her the disaster response coordinator for the Alliance, and she deals with material need it. So we'll go ahead and kick it to you for, again, about a 10 minute or so, remarks.
Thank you so much, Sue. I'll go ahead and start off here. My name is Erin Barreda. Like she said, I've co-founded the Greater Pine Island Alliance. Much thanks actually to Kevin Ruane after the storm. He was instrumental in coming down every week as we founded this nonprofit and helping to get it going and deliver information from the county. And to that, as you can see, one of the great things, the county is greatly involved in our island. The day after the storm, there were survey vehicles on our island conducting surveys. I spoke with them that they were down here trying to get an accurate count. To that, one of the big things they were looking at is debris. So a lot of questions he answered right there, that the debris will be picked up. We'll work on when, because I know that'll be everybody's next question as to when. In terms of your other representatives, right after storm, Byron Donald's office called us to check in to see how this island is doing. So from the county to your state, there are definitely our local leaders that are looking after this island and checking on our needs. So as the Greater Pine Island Alliance, somehow how we coordinate, one of the specific ways is there's volunteer organizations that are active in disaster. So we are here for preparedness, response, and recovery. We've donated Starlinks to various organizations across the island, should we need them. We didn't need them this time. They will have them. We coordinate with the American Red Cross to make sure supplies can come. We put out on Facebook today, you can see a couple behind us, we still have muck and gut buckets, should people need them, that the Red Cross has so nicely donated. But to that also, when we talk about emergency response, disaster recovery, getting ready for a storm, prior to a storm, the state EOC generally stands up, and one of those functions is volunteer coordination across the state. So we're associate board members of the state level volunteer organizations acting in disaster. And so once that emergency services ESF 15 stands up, we meet daily and we have the opportunity to brief out daily to the state. As such, today I requested for our island any and all volunteers that would like to come. Obviously, the hard part, as we all know, is the storm devastated further north of us. And a lot of those volunteers that would normally come down are moving north. To that, it's going to be more imperative that we locally reach out, whether it's our churches, our community, our neighbors, and our friends. On our website, and Erin will talk some more about this, but you can reach out and volunteer. We've had already some volunteers come in from Cape Christian, out in Cape Coral, FGCU put out an all call for us, for faculty and students to come down to the island. The American Red Cross has reached out to contacts. Week of Compassion Church has reached out. United Way has briefed out on our behalf at the state level for volunteer organizations. The challenge will be, it will not come as fast as Hurricane Ian. We were on the national call with FEMA today, and FEMA discussed the challenge across our nation all the way up, as we know, into North, South Carolina, even Tennessee, Virginia area. And so the challenge will be getting these resources. So we as Islanders have always been independent. And one of the things we're needing to do is get the volunteers. I can tell you right now, we've been inundated with phone calls. We could even use help answering our phones. So if you can't even muck and gut, and that's not in what you can physically do, if you could spend a couple hours answering phones or calling people back who call in, that would help right now. So the magnitude is large, but we are stronger than the surge. And I'll pass it off to Miss Erin. We'll talk about locally more the resource and response that we're currently doing.
So I think one of the biggest things to remember for your own recovery, I just want to put out this first and foremost, as you're sorting through your belongings, I know it's hard for us to sort through our belongings and decide what stays and what goes, but please, please, please document everything. Get your phone out, anything that you move, anything you take to the road, take multiple pictures. As we learned after Ian, photographs actually do work in lieu of receipts if it's a documentable in your own property, in your own home. We do have the muck and gut buckets, the flood buckets from the American Red Cross here in our office. I believe Nadine's going to put up the information for everyone of how you can find them. 9 to 2, Monday through Friday, they'll be here and available. And with as the commissioner said, when you're sorting through your rubbish, it will help so much more expedite the process of that debris removal if you do indeed do that. The other thing I want to be very clear about, GPIA, a lot of those calls are coming in because Ms. Sue has been boots on the ground, and I was going to send her a message to remind her as well. Now that we're a few days out of the storm, we've been in a few houses today, and because we're not as in habit as we were 2 years ago, we're starting to see some of that mold. Please make sure you're taking care of your safety and your sanitation. The water on the streets is still not clean, and the air is starting, I think we're all starting to feel the allergies and the things in the air. Please remember to wear your masks. And as we are cutting drywall and mucking and gutting things, be safe so that as we return everyone to a safe, sanitary, and secure space, we're doing so with as little injury as possible. As the Colonel said, since we do not have the same volume of resources due to the drastic needs up north, we need to make sure we're looking after each other and reminding each other to stay safe as we help each other recover. To that note, if you or someone that you know does need help, please go to our website at gpialliance.org and click on the Get Help tab. If you don't have the ability to do that, call into the office. We've had countless phone calls. Our list is getting very long, and to that point, as Erin said, we need volunteers, and that doesn't mean in the homes you don't have to be a general contractor. You don't have to do all these things. Some of this is simply getting wet items out of houses. We had a phone call today from a 92-year-old man. He doesn't have the ability to push his wet soaking couch outside. So we need all different types of labor, both skilled and unskilled, meaning if you have the ability to lift your arms and 20 pounds, we can use you. Sometimes it's even just helping an elderly individual sort through what clothes need to go and stay. So you can do the same thing with that QR code. Thank you, Nadine, and get in touch with us. And we are here, just like as we have been since Ian, we are here for the long haul, and our goal is to return every survivor home to a safe, secure, and sanitary environment.
Thank you, Erin. And I'll just finish up. So where we are, like I said, we have preparedness, response, and recovery. Obviously, right now, we all need to be thinking response to current Helene, but don't forget your own preparedness should something else unfortunately happen. And then with Ian, largely, we're still in recovery. Some of those homes were re-damaged. So we will work together. We are a nonprofit. We're here to help the island and help you. We do need donations to keep everything going. We do work with Lee County and Lee County's long-term recovery team to achieve that. But please, if you have time, if you have money, please donate.
Just two more things I didn't mention. So inside the flood buckets, there are the very large scrub brushes, the large log squeegees, mops, sanitizers, gloves, and a mask. And we're also working with several organizations, including the VFW and the International Lions Club. Obviously, we don't need it quite yet, but yes, we will again be doing supply distribution. So back to the Colonel's comment, we will need donations because obviously we want to be more resilient than we have been. So with that, all that information will be available on the GPIA page. GPICA will get copied on all of that, and they will push it out as well. So all of the membership is aware of when and where things are available. And please remember that both of our food pantries on the island are still fully operational. So if you are in need of those types of resources as well, between the Catholic Church and then our partners at the Pine Island Community Church, the food pantries are open and operational.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, thank you both. I think we're ready if folks have questions, if you can, we'll start by just, raising your hand in the, electronically on the reactions. And just, Nadine is going to take questions first come, first serve. And if you can make sure you direct your question to either the folks from GPIA or Mr. Ruane. We can go ahead and get started with questions.
Go ahead, Ellen Ballard.
Just unmute yourself before you start.
All right, I'm putting the laptop over to Robert.
Yeah, I think it's great that the county tax assessor is devaluing the houses, the property or houses as the storm, as a way to help homeowners out. On the other hand, when you go to get a building permit, if you had $130,000 or $120,000 home, and the appraisal is lowered to say 100,000, now it's only, if you go to repair or get a building permit, the 50-50 rule goes, and 50% of 100,000 is $50,000, and you got $80,000 worth of damage. You can't rebuild. That's the negative side of it. But it's nice that they give you that option to lower your taxes, but you get hurt when you try to rebuild.
That's not necessarily accurate.
Okay, good.
So the 5-year look back was ignored and obviously not in the calculation from Ian. It's not in the calculation from Helene. So nothing that took place in Ian will be held against you. So it's like it didn't exist. So although your value, we're still going to look at your value pre-Ian, and you'll be able to do that. So the 50% rule will not be impacted by your prior damage. There's a statute that basically said any improvements you made in a 5-year look back will not be held against you. So you're exempt from any improvements you made from Ian. Hopefully that gives you some type of relief.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. Here's one online. Why is the flood plan review stalling all permits then? I guess, Kevin, that's for you.
So floodplain review is not, actually we're trying to make assessments in opening up temporary areas. And there was conversations today to actually putting something on Pine Island so you can get your own permits, but I'm not aware. And if you have any specifics, make sure you contact my office, but we are processing with obviously Hurricane Helene is getting a priority. If you have any issues, I need to know about it. We will certainly make sure your permit gets expedited, but hopefully in the next couple of days, we'll have worked out logistics because we're going to have temporary people at different locations. And there was conversations about obviously Boca today, Pine Island, Sanibel. So we have direct ability to interact. So you don't have to come downtown.
Okay, and that person just followed up and says, flood plan review is taking more than 5 to 6 weeks right now. So, I
Send me an
guess that person-
example and we'll certainly, jump on whatever issues. That's not my understanding. So
Okay.
let me get involved.
Thank you, Kevin.
No problem.
Oops, Sue, go ahead. Sorry, I muted you.
Yeah, I have a question about insurance claims. During Ian, there was a lot of stuff going on with insurance companies denying claims. Are we gonna is there any avenue other than arguing with your adjusters and your insurance companies? I guess this may be for Mr. Wayne. Any advice on how to deal with insurance companies?
I mean, first and foremost, Jimmy Petronis is our CFO. I've always indicated if you have any issues, his office has a local representative in our area and certainly will be instrumental. And the insurance company is only held responsible to the state agency. So anyone that has a license to have insurance in Florida obviously reports to Tallahassee. Jimmy Petronis is the chief financial officer. We do have a representative right in Lee County in our building that represents his office. I can certainly make sure you have his contact info. That's the best avenue. I've had people get their claims denied and their office has got involved because, again, you're one claim, and I don't even want to mention a name, but let's just say it's ABC Insurance Company. The state has obviously the power to interfere with their license, suspend their license, so they get involved in a very aggressive way. And I would strongly suggest, because I've had many people have the state get involved, and since we have a local representative, that's really helpful because I can't imagine the number of claims. But if anyone still has Ian open, feel free to call my office. Pamela's out, her husband had brain surgery, but Patty is filling in for her. She used to work for Rogers DJLA. She's worked for 25 years. She knows our system as well, if probably not better than Pamela. I hate to say that, but she's been at the county for 25 years. So she can certainly get you to Craig. I'm trying to remember how to pronounce his last name, but that's the best avenue to go when you have insurance issues.
Thank you. I know, Kevin, that at the county commission meeting, there was a lot of discussion about debris pickup. And I know the county is working on its regular schedule. Is that correct? Someone's asking about recommendations for preparing for another storm when there's so much debris out there currently.
Yeah, so we're still obviously deployed regular. Solid waste is handling this and bifurcating it in a couple of different fashions. One, normal collections being picked up, whether it's garbage or whether it's recycling. Two, we're trying to separate construction material from heavy appliances to just obviously easier debris, brush, or anything of that nature. We recognize that people took water in, so we're just trying to have it separated. I will make sure that this organization has the guidelines you understand, but we have more, both from Waste Pro and Waste Management, more resources been allocated to this. And we also have Craddock Golf, who is on normal, they deal with storms only. So a separate contractor to deal with that. So we're going to deal with garbage in one vein. Craddock Golf is going to deal with hurricane or anything related to hurricane in that vein. We're just trying to separate because different trucks have different ability to pick up construction material. We're gonna have different trucks that have to pick up like refrigerators or stoves or things of that nature. So we have more than our share of resources. Just be patient because obviously you're gonna have more trucks on the road than you'd like to, which obviously is gonna be a challenge for Pine Island and your area because of the bridge and the backup. But I don't know how to remove the debris without sending a lot of resources out.
Will the county do any kind of extra debris pickup if we end up having another storm start bearing down on us?
Yeah, so obviously, as we have an understanding, we will accelerate not only the number of days we do it, but the areas of where we seem to have the most debris. So we're more than aware of what's going on. We're preparing right now because we believe there may be another storm week after next. So we're trying to do everything we possibly can to get in front of it. We had some pretty productive meetings with Crowded Golf today. The good news is we had a contract with them, and they've been our contract hauler since I was mayor of Sanibel. So they've been that resource. We've talked about this. There's an urgency, and they're more than aware of the urgency with another storm pending. So it's day 4, as I always say, working day from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So today's day 5. So let's just see how we do. If there's any areas that you're aware of that you have any anxiety over, always contact my office and I'll make sure that we get to it. But give everybody a couple of days to try to deploy the assets necessary. And the challenge, obviously, on your island is obviously the bridge and some of the delays associated with that. So I'm apologizing in advance. We're just going to make more congestion. And I'm sorry, but we do need to get the material out of here. I don't need projectiles out there to try to create more damage.
All right. And someone was asking, does that go for private road pickup too, or just the county road?
All areas.
Okay.
We're treating this storm the way we treat it in Ian. It's the same exact rules. We will pick up anything.
Thank you. Moving back to flood questions. Lynn is asking, looking into the future and the anticipated increase in storms and storm surge, is it a mistake that base flood elevations in many areas actually dropped by 4 to 6 inches in many coastal areas of the county after the 2022 FEMA flood maps were adopted? I'm not sure I understand the question, Kevin.
I think
I
that's
don't either,
feet.
because honestly, from Ian, if anything,
Sorry.
from Ian, we actually raised everyone's ability to go up anywhere from 6 to 12 feet. So I don't know the question. I'm trying to understand the question, because the flood maps might be one thing, but our ability to give people any type of relief is, we're trying to obviously give you more. And there was anxiety associated with height as we made those amendments, but we made those amendments to give people the opportunity to protect their home and do what they need to. So I'm not 100% certain what the questionnaire is trying to drive at.
Swin, do you want to jump in, unmute yourself and follow up on that? Okay, I guess not. Nicole Ferreira has a question. Nicole, do you want to unmute yourself and ask, or would you like me to read it?
Hey, sorry, it's Swin. I just found my mute. Can you
Okay,
hear me okay?
go ahead with your follow-up then, please.
Yeah, so I didn't know that the county had made a change. I just know that the 2022 FEMA, base flood, maps came out, and the base flood elevations in many of the coastal areas actually dropped many feet. So I did not know that there was a way to work with the county to actually build up higher.
Yeah, so, the flood maps came out before Ian, and we obviously went through massive amendments that many people knew about. And obviously there was a lot of anxiety because nobody really wanted us to go up. But to me, to give people the proper protection, you had to go up. I didn't know how to give people, my home on Sanibel that what my in-laws were living in took 8 feet of water in, and honestly, to build it back at a lower plane made 0 sense. And fortunately, Sanibel went up, but we adopted that throughout. Took a lot of criticism from people that we raised the height because people didn't want us to raise height, but I don't know how to give people protection. And more importantly, I don't know how to prove to FEMA, and that was part of our battle with FEMA, is trying to make sure you all have the discount, because they weren't necessarily thrilled with the changes we made. And then they started to get into some undocumented or unlicensed people obviously doing work with 100,000 parcels that were damaged during Ian. When they talked about a couple hundred unlicensed houses that had unlicensed workers, I was like, really, with 300,000 permits that were issued, that we have a couple hundred, I don't know how you really suppress those. So we've been working with FEMA, but it's been, an interesting process. But the flood maps, to your point, did come out before Ian and were adjusted dramatically after Ian.
Thank you.
Nicole, do you want to ask your question? Okay, I'll jump in for you. Are there any county plans to submit an action plan for federal CDBG money? I'm assuming, Kevin, that's going to depend on how much total damage we have as a county.
So let me go back and reiterate what most people don't realize. So when we were awarded the $1 billion, okay, the process was we were awarded that. We then had to justify that we had $1 billion worth of unmet need. We submitted a plan of $9.4 billion. So we received $1 billion. We have $8.4 billion that is still, in our eyes, potentially refundable. And obviously, my job, as I did in Tallahassee, is now to be a frequent flyer in Washington, because what happens with CBDR money, and New York probably was the best example. They submitted and received $5 billion. Their plan was $19 billion. They ended up with $13 billion. So we are certainly very hopeful that there'll be a couple of additional $1 billion. I'm not going to say it's going to come tomorrow, but we haven't even allocated the money we got so far. So we're still doing infrastructure. We're still trying to do things. So if we feel there's still a greater need after this, we will not hesitate to submit another plan. But I'd like to try to work on the $8 billion that's still outstanding in our eyes, and we need to work through. And now it's going to be even more challenging, as you could imagine, because the amount of claims, thank God ours is 2 years in advance. We have 2 years running room, because with the devastation that taken place from obviously Helene, I can't even imagine the type of grants and requests that are going to be made to the federal government. But ours are 2 years old, so I believe we'll have a much greater head start.
Hi, I'm sorry. This is Nicole. I just found my mute button. Yes, and you mentioned New York, which I'm a homeowner as well in New York. We were during Sandy, and the New York Rising program was very successful. We have a lot of, ground level, floor level beach bungalows here that were all now, I mean, the town looks completely different. Some people love that and some don't, but they certainly, there's no threat to, with the storm surge here, in regards to that. So I was curious if there were similar grant programs that the Lee County's looking to perhaps make available or design that are similar to that New York Rising grant, where I could imagine many of our homes, particularly in Matlacha, would benefit from that type of infrastructure support and assistance. Thank you so much for what you're doing here. Thank you, everybody.
Not a problem. So, again, we submitted everything imaginable. Having come from New York and having family still up there, I basically studied their plan. I certainly learned a great deal. A lot of elected officials were very helpful in what they included in our plan, in their plan. So we did that. That's part of the $8.4 billion. We're still obviously waiting to make some progress on. And the process in New York took a lot of years, and unfortunately, it's just going to take some time. But we're very cautiously optimistic we'll continue to get funding. And as that continues to come, the process is just one that requires a lot of scrutiny, a lot of backup, a lot of documentation as you continue to get money. But we hope to mimic a lot of things that went on in New York. I think they were very successful, and it gives people a lot of relief, especially people that want to leave the area. There'll be homes that'll be bought, fair market value. We did a couple of minor homes right as you come over the bridge, right in Pine Island. Some of those properties where we needed the additional right of way for bridges and stuff. So we tried to address things that had immediate benefit for the public. Now we got to get to the individuals. So just stay tuned. This road, unfortunately, is going to take a long time. It's just a very tedious process.
All right, I think Erin at the GPIA has a question.
It's actually not a question. I just wanted to let everyone know that here in the upcoming weeks, we'll put out the date. So the United Policyholders as an organization of legal professionals that provide free legal advice when it comes to insurance and various other things that are storm related. They've been at our office numerous times, but we're going to set up new dates for this incident. And so as we get those dates, we'll push them out. You can call the office and make an appointment and get that free legal advice of how to deal with any policy questions or ongoing legal issues you might be having. for renters as well.
Thanks, Erin. I'll make sure I add that to our website as well. Sue, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I had a question for Mr. Ruane. We haven't, I mean, the news is pretty sparse about what's going on everywhere. What's going on Sanibel relative to Ian? You mentioned, you know, you didn't flood this time. You know, I mean, I guess relative to Ian, how are things out there on Sanibel?
You know, I think part of the problem with Sanibel is their recovery is a very slow recovery. It took Sanibel's government 15 months to raise height. So nobody really was looking, like in our particular place. It's not my primary house, but we didn't even contemplate doing anything to our home till they raised height. Unfortunately, Ian took place in September, and it was not until December of the following year that they actually raised the height. Each municipality has the ability to raise height. So you have to go through a pretty tedious process. We were able to expedite that to county, but at slower places and people that want to preserve the environment were very reluctant to have height raised. As a result, their recovery is a lot slower. So unfortunately, a lot of people had pods in their lawn, you know, with their furniture and things of that nature. So when this storm came, they obviously were impacted once again. My business partner in my business is lives on Sanibel, and he took a couple of feet of water in, and he literally just finished his renovation. So a lot of people in that area, we have not gotten enough specific intel, just some broad overviews, as we have our municipal calls every day. We do them twice a day to try to get some feedback to understand what assistance are. But Sanibel is going to be slow, no different than Fort Myers Beach, just a much slower recovery because of the devastation. And again, the reluctancy to raise height really doesn't enable anyone to do anything, especially when you have a 50-50 rule and you're over 50%. If you can't raise height, what do you do?
Yeah. All right, thanks.
Sure.
Ellen, you've got your hand raised. Go ahead.
It doesn't make any sense to me to spend millions, literally millions of dollars on beach renourishment to push sand in for the weather to then push it back out or over the roads. And can any of the monies that are allocated for that be redistributed to residents and communities that need the money to rebuild?
So unfortunately, no. So the way all funding works is it comes from different areas and different departments. DEP handles the environment. DEP is the one that funded beach renourishment. So I can't take money out of an enterprise fund for the environment and give it to homeowners. It just doesn't work that way. The government doesn't have that flexibility. I would love to do that. We would do that in my private world, but we don't have those types of flexibility. When you get money for transportation, it's got to go to roads. When you get money for debris, it's got to go to debris. When you get money for beach renourishment, it's got to go there. I understand your point, but honestly, if you talk to some of the coastal communities that pay an awful lot of money in for bed tax, you know, they certainly advocated very strongly for beach renourishment and, more importantly, sand dunes to try to prevent some flooding. So understand your point. I wish I could juggle money and switch out of pockets and use it where, you know, it could be utilized very quickly, but that's just not the way it works, unfortunately.
Go ahead with your question, Steve. Steve, you're muted still.
All right, are you talking to me?
Stephen
Yes.
Eldridge.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry. This is for Commissioner Ruane. Two things, one an observation.
as we move through the summer, the stoplight over by the Little Pine Island Bridge seems to have generally worked okay. Have been happy with that, but it seems like as we move into the fall, and particularly with the things that are going on, you've got a lot of traffic trying to get on. And, you know, everybody's having to go through the 2-minute drill each side. And unfortunately, the sides aren't equivalent. So sometimes you have, you know, 4 minutes worth of cars trying to get off and hours worth of cars trying to get on. Is there any discussion about trying to do something to balance that out a bit, whether it's actually having people there, or aren't there smart stoplights or whatever that could help sort of work through that issue? Have you heard anything?
Yes, so there are AMS devices that actually coordinate and review traffic. It was temporarily put up. It seemed like it was working, to your point, satisfactory. We certainly went back to FDOT to indicate that the volume is picked up. We need to obviously have those installed. Again, these are devices that FDOT puts in as a result of the bridge. We've sat down with a couple of different groups. Many people from the business community reached out to me from Pine Island. So we've sat down with them. The storm obviously gave us some consternation, but we'll be back making sure they're more than aware of the additional volume. And I understand your point. There are devices to sense the traffic and make the lights coordinate with the traffic that's there.
The pattern. Okay.
Yep, they really do.
So then the second thing is just an observation. So I got in my email today something from Betsy Clayton, and it said 4 Pine Islanders from Lee County. And it was a pretty comprehensive email. Apparently it was a social media release, but I would just encourage everybody that's on the line, if you don't have access to that, maybe you could help them, Kevin, so that that email shows right up to them, because it had a 33-minute video in it that basically went through all the departments of Lee County and kind of gave you an update.
Hey, Steve, let me just jump in on that one for you. Betsy sends those emails to us as an organization so we can get them posted online. If you look at our website, I've got that information up, including today's recording from Lee County Commission's meeting. But I would also encourage everybody on this meeting to sign up for Lee County email blasts. They put out pretty comprehensive information, and also to follow our Facebook page and to pop over to our website regularly. We try to put all the information up there as well. So
Nadine, how do they sign up?
Betsy's communications are specific usually to media and community organizations. I don't know that that's a public email.
It is a public email.
Okay, it is. Then
so all you need to do is there's a link for you to get information about Lee County. We'll do that. What I will do in the morning is we have a big volume of email addresses. I will make sure that gets resent out through Constant Contact. It may come, you know, and depending on spam, it may get rejected. So I try to do this, and I've actually flipped back and forth between Constant Contact and MailChimp, because when you have too many people say it's spam, they come back and block you. So, but I will certainly do my part in trying to resend it out. But just sign up for Lee County. It's a really easy, and if you have any issues, feel free to call my office. We'll walk you through, or we'll certainly sign you up if you're having some challenges, or if you don't have Wi-Fi, just call my office.
I think Stephen Long just had a question. Stephen, are you still here?
You can go ahead and read it.
He says, it seems there were no evacuation orders for this storm. Did I miss the memo?
No, I mean, honestly, so emergency management starts at the top of the state, and it flows through 67 counties. Based on weather patterns, based on meteorologists, we do that. Obviously, for us to evacuate, we had 2 safe havens that were open, but no, there was not a mandatory evacuation, and there was no consideration whatsoever for that to take place. I think the flood surprised us because the winds were somewhat different, but I'm not necessarily certain, based on the information we had, we would have changed anything, but there were no evacuation orders, mandatory evacuations at all.
Thank you, Kevin. I think that was probably a bad decision. I think this storm certainly met the threshold, especially in areas like St. James and Mount Lachey, for people to evacuate.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that we've heard loudly and clearly from people from Pine Island after Ian, it was very clear that the majority of the people didn't want to be told what to do, and they weren't going to listen to our orders. I mean, if anything, Pine Island is a very resilient, and I will tell you, that's not what we heard from the community. I'm sorry if anyone was obviously in a bad way. We will certainly make sure in the future that the safe havens. So safe havens are places that you can go to, but there's not a mandatory request to go to. So we always have a couple of safe havens. There are shelters. The difference is we have to have more shelters open when we make a mandatory, and then have to have the resources. The safe havens were North Fort Myers, as well as another one in Lee County. I think we had a total of 60 people in both places. But duly noted your point.
All right, I don't see any other questions. I'll put a last minute call out. Anybody else want to weigh in and ask any questions or make any statements? All right, Sue, I think you can wrap us up.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate all your participation, both the speakers and the people asking questions. Your attendance is important to us. We want to make sure that the community gets information and participates in how we move forward. So thanks a lot. And I think we'll wrap it up. I know we'll have another meeting coming on in November, and we'll keep you posted. Any updates that we get through the GPICA, we will put on our website. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Be safe.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.